gonna steal my peace. 10,000 enemies, they will end up on their knees. When I'm hopeless, I can know this, you're with me. Your light will terrify the dark. I call upon the name. All right, hey, good morning, Crossbridge. How's everyone doing today? All right, well, a few of you are awake. Scotty out in the parking lot. I hear you, man. I love your shirt, bro. Thanks for being here. Hey, thank you all so much for being here today on a beautiful weekend that we've had. Just so many good things happening this week with C3 Sports Football, with our building progressing, and a lot of exciting stuff. And so one thing that I wanted to announce before we kick off our worship service today is we are having another baptism service on August 16th. Okay, so that's coming up in just a few weeks. And here at Crossbridge, we believe that baptism is an outward expression of an internal decision, where it's a decision that you've personally made, not where someone has made the decision for you, someone has told you, or has decided that it was your time to get baptized. Rather, that it was you personally having this heart-to-heart with God, saying, God, you are so good, and regardless of everything else going on, I want to dedicate my life to you, and I want to show the world that that is the decision I am making. And so on August 16th, if that is you, if you've had that, wrestle in your heart stirring up inside, where you feel like you are ready to take your faith public, to declare to the world that you are, hint for the service today, a Jesus freak. Yeah, got you, Trevor, okay? If you are unashamed of the gospel, all of those things, excited to share that with the world, then please, 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 find one of the pastors, find one of the volunteers, staff members here, and let them know, hey, I'm interested in baptism. Can we have a conversation about it? Can we learn a little bit more what it would look like? We're really excited about that. There are going to be more details because it's going to look a little bit different this year than it has in the past, so more details to come next week about what that baptism service will look like. But if you are interested in that, then please, whether you're on stream or here in person, reach out to us, let us know, and we'd love to get you signed up for that. I just want to invite you into this time of worship. It's going to be a really cool worship set today and then a great message. It's a beautiful Sunday, so would you please just stand and worship with me today?
Heaven thundered and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you form. Faith commanded and the mountains moved. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Freedom conquered, all our chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus has overcome. Mercy triumphed when the third day dawned. Darkness was denied when the storm was gone. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Come on, church, put your hands together. We believe that nothing is impossible with our God. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover, but the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. All my praise belongs to you forever. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what He started. Oh, our God will finish what He started. Oh, this is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Whoa. All right. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. Oh, I'm alive. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Whoa. Let's ask Him to move in this place today.
When you move, darkness runs for cover. When you move, no one's turned away. 'Cause where you are, fear turns into praises. Where you are, no heart justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you. Oh, so come, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you.
God, we surrender it all to you this morning. We pray you continue to be with each one of us as we continue the service, as we dig into a song. As Trevor teaches, I just pray that you open us up to new things. Help us see things in a new way. Not just this song that he's going to teach about, but in everything we do, God. Show yourself to us in a new way today. It's in your name we pray and sing. Amen. You guys can go ahead and have a seat. So as you know, we've been in this series where each of the pastors picked a song, and I obliged them and kind of just let them pick whatever song they wanted, which was my fault. I think they actually planned it when I was gone, or I wasn't in staff meeting that day. But anyway, Trevor picked Jesus Freak, and we're going to play that here in a second, but I just wanted to share a little bit of Trevor and I's relationship real quick. I'm just stalling, hoping that we're raptured and I don't have to sing this song, but I don't think that's going to be the case. But anyway, so my wife and I started coming to Crossbridge about 7 years ago, and so I've known Trevor for 7 years now. And if you don't know Trevor, just follow him on Facebook. That's really all you need to know. That's who Trevor is. But anyway, I started getting involved with the worship team, and he approached me. He said, "Hey, we have this event called D Now for the youth. Would you be willing to play and put a team together and play for this weekend for the service?" And it wasn't this first D Now. I think it was the second one. Trevor says, "Hey, can you play Jesus Freak?" And by this point, our relationship had grown to a point where Trevor knew that I would do anything to help serve the youth. And really any part of the church, whatever I can do with my gifts and my talents, I'm willing to help out. I'm willing to do what I can. So that second year, we played Jesus Freak for D Now. I'm sure the teens loved it. It was fun. I think Jeff, our guitarist over here, played that week too. And, so from there, Trevor has just realized that any song he asks me to play, I'm probably going to do it because he's good at justifying why it's going to be beneficial for the youth or for church or whatever it is. He just has a good way of making me do it, and I'm just kind of a pushover for that kind of stuff. But I don't know. All that to say, here's Jesus Freak. I want to see you guys singing along. I know some of you know this song. Separated, I cut myself clean from the past that comes back in my darkest of dreams. Been apprehended by a spiritual force and a grace that replaced all the me I divorced. Saw a man with a tat on his big fat belly. He wriggled around like marmalade jelly. It took me a while to catch what he said, cause I had to match the rhythm of his belly with my head. Jesus saves is what it rains with a typical tattoo green. And he stood on a box in the middle of the city and he claimed he had a dream. What will people think when they hear that I'm a Jesus freak? What will people do when they find that it's true? I don't really care if they label me a Jesus freak. There ain't no disguising the truth. The truth, kamikaze, my death is gain. I've been marked by my maker of peculiar display. High and lofty, they see me as weak, but I won't live and die for the power they seek. There was a man from the desert with naps in his head. The sand that he walked was also his bed. The words that he spoke making people assume there wasn't too much left in the upper room. Skins on his back and hair on his face. He thought he was strange from the look he ate. All the Pharisees tripped when they heard him speak until the king People say I'm strange, does that make me a stranger? My best friend was born in a manger.
Oh, man. Hey, I'm so glad you guys did that. You guys are the best. Jake's going to hit me with his mic, though. Hey, how about our worship team, huh? Jake's not wrong. What he didn't tell you is that he has also played some Miley Cyrus songs with me. And Taylor Swift. And all the other ridiculous songs that we've done at D Now over the years. Imagine Dragons. So, yeah, these guys are awesome. And I love that they indulge my awesome, interesting requests. But they were good. Hey, real quick before we get started, if you have children, we are running Bridge Kids up through 3rd grade, so you can make your way over here. People are holding signs, so you can make it to the right areas. But yeah, so your kids can head that way. I'm just so excited by their song. Yeah, you guys were awesome, by the way. It doesn't even matter like what I say now, because they crushed it. But Jesus Freak. Oh, wait, yeah, my name's Trevor. I'm the youth pastor, if you don't know me, great. Jesus Freak. That song came out in 1995. That's a long time ago. So maybe you've never heard that song before. But like Jake actually said, if you follow me on Facebook, I've recently been posting my list of favorite songs of all time. And I went decade by decade, posted my favorite Christian worship songs. And I'm actually making a list right now that I'm struggling with a little bit. But it's my favorite Christian songs of all time. And I don't have a great list yet, but I will tell you that without a doubt, Jesus Freak is number 1 on that list. Like, nothing's really even close to it. And so Jake and I actually had a conversation on Friday. He said, he was sitting next to me, he's like, so are you sure you don't want to, like, preach on a different song this Sunday? Because, like, we can totally change it still. And I was like, no. Jesus Freak is my favorite song, favorite Christian song of all time. And I know a lot of our sermons have been about the lyrics, but honestly, for those of you who were listening to Jesus Freak, and if you don't know the lyrics, I'll just give you a heads up. They're honestly not that good. And they're not that interesting. And honestly, like, I tried to do some research to figure out, like, why did DC Talk write this song and what did it mean to them? And the only thing I could find in all of my research was that Toby Mac looked up the word freak in the dictionary, and he saw it meant ardent enthusiast. And he's like, yeah, I'm an ardent enthusiast for Jesus. And so they wrote this song. The rest of the lyrics, I'm kind of like, they don't even really go together. They don't make much sense. Toby Mac's raps are just like, why does a guy have a tattoo on his belly and it's bouncing? Like, I don't know. And then he writes about John the Baptist eating locusts, and I'm like, it doesn't really connect. But what I want to talk today, and again, I say all that, it's my favorite Christian song of all time. But I want to talk today about kind of what this song has meant to me in my life. And just share some stories with you that kind of go along with that. And so this will be a little bit of a different sermon today. It's going to be a lot of storytelling. But for me, the song Jesus Freak, DC Talk, I would argue that DC Talk is maybe the greatest Christian band of all time. And you can argue with me, that's okay. My opinion. But the song Jesus Freak, when I look back, so again, the song came out in 1995. And when I was growing up, I love music. I've always loved music. Music's a big part of my story and my journey with God. And when I was growing up, we would always listen to Christian radio. And unless I could convince my dad to turn off talk radio and it was just him and I, and then he would always play classic rock and complain even about classic rock. Unless Rush came on, he was a big Rush fan, so that was my experience with music growing up. And I always remember Christian radio just like thinking, like, why does every song sound the same? Like I was always kind of bored by it, and I just didn't quite get, like, it didn't excite me in any way. And so I was born in 1987, so I would have been 8 going into 9 years old when this song came out, elementary school student. And I can remember when I heard this song, like it totally changed my perspective of Christian music. For the first time, I can remember like being genuinely excited about a Christian song and about an album. And I would say this whole album of Jesus Freak is just tons of different styles and different songs. And I thought it was really, really cool and really amazing how this band put this sound together. And honestly, I didn't even care what the lyrics were, because for the first time I was excited to be a Christian, to be a part of something, literally just because of this song. And a lot of you are probably sitting out there and be like, yeah, that song was like a 2 out of 10, and if I never heard it again, that'd be too soon, you know? Like, I get that, but that's what this song meant for me. It was a song that totally changed how I felt about being a Christian. And honestly, I don't even like the phrase Jesus Freak. I think I had a shirt that said freak on it growing up because of this song, but like, you know, that was me as a younger, less mature child, right? I've come a long way. But this song kind of changed my perspective. And what I love, too, is I don't know if any of you know the history of DC Talk as a band. But one thing that blows me away about DC Talk as a band, and I learned this, actually, I didn't know this until doing some research for this sermon, but the DC Talk started off in the early 90s, late 80s as a rap group. And they are just like pure early 90s rap sound. You can go listen to their song. I think Heaven Bound was their biggest song. If you want to experience some 90s rap later. And I'll be honest, I hate 90s rap. Like, I think it's just terrible. But DC Talk starts as this rap group. Then all of a sudden they shift to writing Jesus Freak, this rock song. And a lot of people give influence to like Nirvana for kind of influencing the sound. Then they go on later and they become like, they write a lot of soft like ballads, and then they go and write like a punk album, and then they kind of break up. And every time they did something, they like totally reinvented their sound, which always kind of blew me away. And the thing I love more than anything else about DC Talk is how they were able to reinvent their sound and reach people and get people to experience the message of Jesus the way they needed to experience it. See, I want to tell a bunch of stories today, but the whole point of all these stories is this: that the message of God, the message of Jesus is timeless, but the way that we understand it oftentimes is through culture, is through the things that we like and dislike, the things that we know, the things that we understand. And for me, the thing that made me excited about being Christian is this very cultural song of Jesus Freak as an elementary school student. And I know a lot of people who heard this song were probably offended even by it. Like, why are we rapping about John the Baptist? And I mean, I kind of agree with them, but at the same time, like, I also got really excited about it. And DC Talk was able to reinvent themselves and always create a very cultural sound and cultural message to reach people. Paul writes about this in 1 Corinthians. And in 1 Corinthians 9, 19 to 23, he talks about how he is able to and how he thinks about ministering to people. He writes this, 1 Corinthians 9:19, he says, "Even though I am a free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring the Jews to Christ. When I was with those who follow the Jewish law, I too lived under that law, even though I am not subject to the law. I did this so I could bring to Christ those who are under the law. When I'm with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I too live apart from that law so I can bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God, I obey the law of Christ. When I am with those who are weak, I share in their weakness, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessing. So Paul very clearly here states, he says, I don't just go to people and I tell them about Jesus and I leave. He says, I go to people and I understand the way that they live, and I share in the way they live and the way that they think. And I try to explain the timeless message of Jesus to them in a way that they can relate to and they can understand. Because the message of God is timeless, but the way that we understand it is oftentimes very cultural. And Paul very clearly says, though, he doesn't sin, and he's like, it's not like I forget who Jesus is. It's not like I go live with these people, and I'm like, yeah, let's party it up and do all these terrible things. He says, I still remember who Jesus is. I still live that way, but yeah, I'm going to share in the way that they live so I can understand them, and I can share Jesus with them the way they need to understand the message of Jesus. So there's one guy in history who I think does this really, really well. And it's a guy you all have heard of, and probably none of you know his story. We all associate him with March 17th, 14th, I don't even know the date. We wear green. It's oftentimes associated with a lot of drinking. And that's St. Patrick's Day, right? We get to wear our Irish clovers, maybe, if you have some Irish heritage. But St. Patrick is actually a real guy who is a real saint, according to the Catholic Church. And that's supposedly the day he died, though they really have no idea, so I think they just picked a day. And St. Patrick has a lot of question marks about his story, and I was actually fascinated. We learned about him in a college class and had some discussions about him. But when I've gone back and tried to research his story, there's a lot of question marks in his story, things that we don't quite know. But I don't think the question marks take away from what we do know. And so St. Patrick actually isn't even Irish. He is from Britain. Naturally. When St. Patrick was 16 years old, he is captured by the Irish and taken to Ireland as a slave. Okay, so he is a slave in captivity. He actually says, he writes a little bit of an autobiography, and he says at that time he didn't believe in God, he didn't care about God, that he would have considered himself more of an atheist at that time. And so he's in slavery in Ireland, and he's tending to sheep. And it says at that time, he began to pray and reach out to God. And somewhere along the way in the fields, he meets and experiences Jesus. And it says he consistently prays, and it says he was praying maybe up to 100 times a day even, and he was constantly in communication with God as he's in slavery. And one night he gets a vision, and God tells him, he's like, go, wander to this lake and find a boat. And it says he escapes, and he wanders for about a month, and he finds a boat. And he's able to escape slavery, escape Ireland, and he goes and he makes it back to Britain, and he studies because he wants to know more about Jesus and more about God, and he ends up learning and studying and knowing a lot of things. And then he feels like God tells him, what I want you to do is go back to Ireland. I want you to become a missionary to the people who captured you and enslaved you. And so what Patrick does is he agrees and he goes back. And remember, he's still an escaped slave, and his slave owner is actually still alive when he goes back. And so they very easily could have, arrested him, killed him, all these things. And he agrees to go back anyway. And he has a unique perspective because he can be a missionary to these people after spending, they estimate it was probably 6 to 10 years in slavery is what they assume it was. So he spends 6 to 10 years understanding their culture, understanding the way they live, understanding the way that they think. And so Patrick goes back to Ireland. And the first thing he actually does when he gets there is he knows that in their culture, they would celebrate their gods. And the Irish culture at the time was very pagan. If you know anything about old Indian religions, it was very similar. They have a lot of different gods that they celebrated, and kind of some messed up practices. And one of the things they did is they would build fires to celebrate their gods. And so the first thing Patrick does when he gets there is he celebrates Easter with this big fire, and people notice and come start asking him why he's building this fire, and he's able to use a cultural worship ceremony to celebrate Jesus and to help connect this fire that he has built to the gods that they would understand. He goes on, and the Irish have an obsession with the number 3 at the time for some reason. They also had a lot of gods already that had multiple faces. And so what Patrick does is he takes these gods that they already know, and he takes this obsession with the number 3, and he helps them understand the idea of the Trinity, about God the Father, God the Son, and God as the Holy Spirit, and a concept that we still struggle to really understand today, right? And we're always looking for cultural references to help people get that, right? Whether it's the egg or water or all these different things. Maybe you guys have heard some other examples to try to understand the Trinity. And Patrick is able to take very cultural things to them and help them understand who Jesus is. They had churches, I guess, if you will, already set up for pagan worship, and Patrick strips them of their idols and replaces them, and they become churches. He takes what they already had in place and he makes them churches. There's also a belief that he uses the clover, the shamrock, to again help people understand the idea of the Trinity, and also they believed in their culture that it had some sort of magical or healing properties. And so again, to help them understand that Jesus and God is a healer. He's taking all these cultural symbols and he's making them relevant to understand the message of Jesus. And the last one, and my favorite in this whole thing, and I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of uncertainty as to the history of the Celtic cross. The leading belief is they associate it with St. Patrick. But really, whether or not the Celtic cross is associated with St. Patrick or not, the story behind it is still incredible to me. And if you don't know what the Celtic cross is, you can pull out your phone and Google it real quick. I would imagine you have seen it. It's a cross that behind the top of it has a circle behind it. And in their culture, there's a couple different beliefs, and it doesn't really matter which one's true because they all make the same point. They believed either that it was a sun that was representative of power, or maybe even a pagan god in their culture. Some believed that it was a circle that represented eternity. And what they did in the Celtic culture is they combined the cross, the symbol of Jesus, with this cultural symbol of power to help, again, people understand the cultural, or through culture, understand the timeless message of God. There's a book that we read in college that has a lot of stuff in it, but I want to read to you a quote from the very end of the book. The book is The Celtic Way of Evangelism by George Hunter. And here's what he writes as the final paragraph, really like 2 sentences of the book. And he writes this. He says, Patrick discovered the gulf between churched people and unchurched people is vast. But if we pay the price to understand them, we will usually know what to say and what to do. If they know and feel we understand them, by tens of millions they will risk opening their hearts to the God who understands them. Patrick was able to take the message of Jesus and explain it to the Irish in a way that they understood it, and he radically changed an entire country because of the way he was able to help them understand the timeless message of God. I imagine for you guys, there's something you can point to where a moment or a story or people or somebody who came alongside you to help you understand the message of God in a way that made sense to you. And again, I talked about music a little earlier. I want to share with you the number one thing I would say that led me or helped me stay in the church. My parents were obviously a big influence. They brought me to church. But I loved music, and I was not that engaged in the church as most, I would argue, middle school boys probably are a little spacey on Sunday mornings, right? And when I was going into 6th grade, I was really excited about band. I joined band, and I watched my sister play French horn, and I was like, that's really weird. Why would anyone play French horn? And when you join band and going into 6th grade, they, I don't know for you guys, for us, they brought us in, they had us into a room, and you had a guy from the music store who's like wanting you to play all these instruments and try them out. And so they hand me a trumpet, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And they hand me a clarinet and all these different things. And I'm like, I don't really want any of this stuff. I really just want to play drums. And I guess I learned later, all they do is every boy wants to play drums when they walk in, so they have to talk like most of them out of it. But I was pretty stubborn. I'm like, I'm playing drums. I don't really care. So I get to 6th grade, I played drums, I loved being a drummer. A lot of times people want to be called percussionists, and I'm like, nah, I'm just a drummer, I don't need a fancy term. I did play a killer triangle, though, just so we're all on the same page. But at the end of my 6th grade year, I decided I really wanted to join jazz band. And so what I was going to do was join jazz band, but in jazz band, you play drum set, which is very different than just playing a snare drum or a triangle, which is all I had done in 6th grade. And so my parents decided they were going to get me a drum set. So they got a peddler's post. Anyone remember peddler's post? I don't know. I don't only remember using it once. We got a drum set out of the peddler's post when I was going into 7th grade, and they bought this. It was a crappy drum set, and I had it forever, and I love that thing. I had the drum set for a week and a half before the lead pastor of our church, and I went to a very small church. We were between 75 and 150 people while I was there over 15 years or whatever it was. And our lead pastor kind of ran everything, and so I had the drum set for a week and a half before he comes to me, and he's like, we're going to put you in front of church on Sunday morning. And I was like, that sounds incredible. I'm like 12 years old at the time. I owned a drum set. I think it was less than 2 weeks before they put me in church on a Sunday morning, which probably went about as terribly as you are thinking it went. And so if you want to go buy a drum set tonight, I hear Jake's going to let you on stage. It's for a good cause, I promise. But I had a drum set for a week and a half before they let me in front of church on a Sunday morning. And man, I can remember that was the most excited maybe I've been in my whole life. Like getting to play drums, also the most terrified. And we started off with just a bass drum, a snare drum, and one cymbal so I could keep it simple. And I was way too loud, and people complained, obviously. And I remember my lead pastor was determined to make it work, and so he bought me different sticks that were quieter, and then he bought a plastic shield to put in front of me, and at one point he actually bought me brushes, and he's like, I don't know, man, just trying to make them work, because you're way too loud. I was way too excited to be up there. And they let me play. I played basically every week until I graduated and went to college. And we had a deal actually on prom day, like the day after prom. He said, I don't care when you go to bed. I don't care if you fall asleep during my sermon or go nap in the side room, but you will be here to play drums. And I'm like, all right, I'll be here to play drums on like 3 hours of sleep. That's fine. And what happened for me during that time is that I learned to love God. And honestly, the reason I still sit during worship today and the reason I'm still animated is because the way I learned to connect to God was behind a drum set, playing music, and it didn't matter what the words were. It was the rhythm that helped me understand what God had given me, the abilities I had, the way he created me. And it was through music and through rhythm that I learned to love Jesus, and I learned to understand the timeless message of God through drums. And it actually was a really cool moment because a lot of people in our church, by the time I graduated, our entire worship team was high school students who were playing guitar and bass and singing. And it was this really awesome moment where we got to create music together. And yet I will tell you, the whole time that was happening, every time I got up to play, there were some older people in our congregation who didn't like it. We had people who would walk out every Sunday morning when I would play. And as a middle school student, I really struggled to understand like why they didn't like it or whatever. And some of it was I was too loud, and we had cinder block walls, and I was next to one of these cinder block walls, and the drums just like shot down that side of the church. They could have just moved to the other side, but whatever. But people would walk out, and they sheltered me a lot from this, and I know our lead pastor got in a lot of arguments over it, and some people, frankly, just didn't want drums in the church. And it was a cultural thing where it's like drums don't have a place in the church. We are organ and we are piano, and those are the only instruments that exist. And I love my lead pastor, and I'm forever grateful for him for sticking up, for me and for the rest of the students that were on stage with us, and that we were able to experience God in a very cultural way, and some people even had a problem with it. And the reason I think this is really, really important to understand for us is because as I've gotten older and as I've started to look, especially in our current day, cultural shifts happen like every 10 seconds, let alone over hundreds of years. That it used to be, it's every day there's a new cultural trend to understand. And just like conversations I remember having with my parents, as probably all of you did, right, is I wanted to listen to certain music or watch certain things or play certain music or video games or whatever, and my parents were like, no, we don't like this, we don't agree with it. And not that they were wrong and not that I was right, but it was cultural differences in the way that we understand the world. And as I've gotten older, what I've noticed about myself is just like those people who looked at me when I was drumming, I've started to look at future culture trends and say, like, I don't like these and I don't agree with them and I'm not excited about them and they bother me. And I think I'm in the wrong because when I look back at my life, there were people who stood up for me and allowed me to experience God the way I needed to experience him, the way I needed to understand him. The way that DC Talk created music helped me connect to God. The way they let me play drums helped me connect to God. And I really don't want to be somebody who, as I get older, I stand against culture. And now let me be very clear about one thing, though, okay? Despite Emily's persistence and Graham's persistence, right, I will never admit that Ariana Grande is better than Taylor Swift, okay? Because Taylor Swift is obviously the superior musician and talent in every way, and I have the microphone, so you have to listen to me say that over and over. I got into an argument yesterday again with Graham. But all that being said, if Ariana Grande has a song that helps people understand the timeless message of Jesus, I really want to be somebody who is all about it. Despite the fact I will consistently tell you I don't like any of her music. And there's like one song that's all right. But in my life, I don't want to be somebody who looks at culture and says, we can't use this because I don't like it. I think we are called, just like Paul says, to become like and to understand and to use the way that people see the world to help them understand the timeless message of Jesus. I can point to so many people who did that for me in so many moments and songs and things. And I know that people were offended or didn't like some of the things that I like and some of the things I would say helped me understand Jesus. Just like I'm sure there were people who look at the Celtic cross and would have been like, we should never combine this symbol with this symbol because that doesn't make any sense. But I would argue that just like Jesus in every story that he tells, when he tells stories about farming, I don't understand farming. My dad grew up on a farm, I grew up in New Haven. Which I guess there's some farms outside of New Haven, but I don't understand sheep. Like, I think they're dumb and they follow, but like beyond that, I don't know. Maybe that's what Jesus is calling me. Maybe I should understand that better. But every story Jesus tells is very cultural in the way that people need to understand it. And that's who God is calling us to be. I hope we are people who, whether or not we like culture, that we learn to understand how to use culture to help people understand the timeless message of Jesus. That's what I think Jesus tells us to do and to be about. Let me pray for us. God, I just ask for us as people that we can be people who learn how to use whatever helps people understand you better. And God, whether we like it or we're excited about it, God, I pray that can be our heart. That whatever it takes to help somebody understand the timeless message of you is what we can be about. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Trevor. As I was, listening, I was trying to think, because, Jesus freak, like Trevor said, if you look at the lyrics, man, bless their heart. They're funny. But the sound is so cool. And so I was trying to think about what was my band in middle school that kind of, really connected me to Jesus. And who remembers Hawk Nelson? I mean, they still kind of make music, but it was also in the early 90s. Now, who doesn't know who Ariana Grande is? Okay? Oh, wow. Like, everybody does. Now, Emily, I have to agree, way better than Taylor Swift, okay? And Graham, okay? But, wow, everyone knows who Ariana Grande is. That might not be a good thing. But so glad. Hey, Trevor, thank you so much for just sharing your heart and sharing about Jesus Freak. If you are new or visiting with us today, we would love to just get to know you a little bit better, just to hang out. So I will be over by the red tent over there. Would love to introduce myself and hang out with you and whatnot for a little bit. Once again, if you are interested in getting baptized on August 16th in just a few Sundays, please let us know. You can also come over to the red tent if that is the case, and we can just have a conversation about that. Parents, as we wrap up today and you go to pick up your children, please look for the signs from your leaders. They will be hanging out in front of the building with signs for the grades. That's where you'll be picking up. Practice social distancing as you're over there so we don't have huge crowds. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you next week at 9:30. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Dawn